how would I go to my doctor? Now you've identified that some women may be even getting into perimenopause before 40. Just going back to the conversation about eating disorders, how can women recognize early warning signs or shifts when it comes to their relationship with food? And so when you're not feeling yourself, what are the questions you would go with your doctor? Yeah, when we talk about perimenopausal women, they often get stuck in the cycle of misdiagnosis. How can perimenopausal women or menopausal women not be stuck in that constant like hamster wheel of, oh, well, my doctor says I'm fine, but I don't feel great? Like, how can we advise them? If you're a woman navigating perimenopause and noticing changes in your body or relationship with food, you are not alone. These shifts can feel confusing, frustrating, and even scary. Today's guest is Dr. Sally-Daganzo and is a UCSF trained and Berkeley bred doctor. She's an internal medicine physician, eating ordered specialist, and functional medicine provider who takes a no nonsense, compassionate approach to healing. She helps women understand what's happening in their bodies and find clarity, even when other specialists have them feeling stuck. What makes her approach unique is the combination of scientific expertise, clinical intuition, and deep respect for your lived experience. In this episode, we'll explore why perimenopause can trigger new and reoccurring eating challenges, how to understand the complex biological and emotional factors at play, and strategies to regain clarity and control in your health journey. If you've ever felt frustrated, unseen, or stuck in your relationship with food during this transitional stage of life, this conversation will give you insight, validation, and practical guidance to help you move forward with confidence. Welcome, Dr. DeGanzo. I am so excited to have you on today.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here and get this information out there.
Such a unique topic and a topic that's not really talked about for perimenopause. I know, eating disorders, I learned about that in my teenage years, but to see that when we are over 40 or hitting perimenopause or menopause, to see that reoccurrence, I thought was really interesting going, okay, we're still having this. So why does that happen as we age?
I mean, I have a lot of theories. I don't know that we know for sure, but I often explain perimenopause as puberty in reverse. I think that's how a lot of physicians and clinicians would explain it. But basically at puberty, you're having all of these hormone shifts when they're coming online. And now perimenopause is kind of the hormones are shifting to go more off. And so there's a lot more of this variability in the hormones and those fluctuations. The teen years and the perimenopause years, they share a lot. The symptoms, the benefit is that when we're in menopause or perimenopause, our executive functioning is a bit better. We have more lived experience, so we can deal with it usually a bit more, but we also have a lot more stressors in our life usually.
Just to go back a bit, it's such a unique part of medicine. Can you tell me a little bit about your journey and how you came to specialize in this area?
I mean, I came to it. I've been doing it now for over 12 years or so, but I went into internal medicine, which is, a pretty broad area of medicine. A lot of people might think of it as like general practitioner, but often it's really hospital based, and it's what you would do before specializing in something like cardiology, gastroenterology. So it's basically all of the body. And I stayed doing that because I didn't know how I would just pick one thing, because I just love learning about all of it. When I came to my most recent job, they needed somebody to staff the eating disorder clinic. They needed a physician because the patient was housed in the psychiatry department. Because they can be so ill with a lot of medical complications, they need a physician to oversee some of the care. And I volunteered because I like to try new things. I thought it would be interesting. And I realized there was so many things that I just didn't even realize eating disorders could do. And there was no end to what you could learn in terms of how, there's, maybe we'll get into it, but different types of eating disorders affect the body. But basically malnutrition, which they cause, has effects on every single part of the body. And that's why really there's not one specialty that has taken ownership of it. So it can contribute to osteoporosis. It can contribute to heart problems, hormone problems, gastrointestinal problems, psychiatric problems, and mood, sleep, pretty much everything, blood cells and blood counts, infection. And so I just saw that this was an area that I wanted to learn more about. And on top of that, I really, really liked the patient population. I liked who they were. I found them really interesting people. And so I started just learning, and I did some additional training in psychiatry to help sort of consolidate that learning, because that was something that you don't get a lot of training in residency. That kind of made it so that I could really feel well equipped to see these people, and I love it. Still love it.
You gotta love what you do, right? And so why is perimenopause such a critical time in women's health, especially regarding eating disorders?
I mean, perimenopause, it is a bit of a hot topic these days. I feel like it's everywhere, or maybe that's because I'm in perimenopause, so I'm hearing it more. But it is where the hormones are shifting. So I mean, aside from physiologically, when you go through perimenopause, for a lot of women, that's shifts in their personal lives, their professional lives. They may have kids moving out of the house, parents getting older, relationship with their spouse if they have one changing. There's a lot of life changes, and then even with things like work, they may be kind of getting to a point where relooking at what they've done. It's a time of reflection. I think you start to have a bit more time, if I mean, especially if you've had a family, if the kids are getting older, you have more time to think about how you're spending your time. And that may lend itself to thinking about food. I mean, food in this country, I don't know about the rest of the world. Well, you're in Canada, I'm in California, but food around here, it's always trending in some way. Women are always targeted. And I think at perimenopause, as we're starting to feel the effects of getting a bit older and our hormones fluctuating, often an answer is, oh, well, maybe I can get rid of gluten, or, maybe I can do keto diet. I mean, this has been for years and years. Women are told that maybe it's something that they're eating that they could do differently. And so it's kind of an easy thing that's in our everyday life. We have to eat to survive. And so that's an easy thing for people to target as something that might help with symptoms that they're having. I think it makes some sense to think, oh, well, maybe I should just eat healthier now because I'm getting older and I'll feel better. But I think that's how I think of it. It's just this collision, or this sort of perfect storm of so many things happening in women's lives around this time. And perimenopause also, I mean, we didn't really define that, but it can start before you're 40 even. And so it's a wide range of time. But if we're talking kind of about more near 50, I think generally there's a lot of shifts happening, not just physiologically, but outside of our bodies. It's just a lot to manage for a woman in particular.
I think when I was feeling the first symptoms of change, I went to my doctor, and my doctor asked me, well, when did your mom go through it? I go, my mom did not discuss perimenopause. Like, I feel the first generation of women who are acknowledging that there is a transition happening, and that also I feel like the medical profession really hasn't paid attention to us enough, and the shift, right? Like I'm tired of reading about studies, and then I'm like, well, who did they study? And it's always like men 35 to 45, right? Of course, you're going to lose weight easier because you're not going through the hormonal shift.
Right.
But it's interesting because I've talked to many women. I have a lot of friends in this age group, and they've been doing all the right things, and they've seen like their weight fluctuate, or they're not able to lose the weight like they traditionally have. And it's a level of frustration of, okay, well, what am I doing? Like, I've been doing this my whole life and it's worked. Like, what's changed now? So I can see how it can be very triggering, because that's the one thing you want control over, considering how many changes are happening in your life. You want that consistent scale or the consistent genes to fit you a certain way.
Right. Yep.
So it can
Yeah.
be very frustrating is the word. Are there patterns you see commonly in women seeking care at this stage?
I mean, one thing actually, to go back to what you mentioned about going to the doctor and they're like, when did your mom go through it? When you go to your doctor, the other thing that comes up is that since it's a time of so much stress, then they often label it as anxiety or stress. Which, I mean, stress doesn't, maybe it can make your joints ache or your hair thin or your libido worse, right? Yes, psychological factors can affect all of those things. And so I think it's easy for physicians to say that, and especially if there's nothing to hang your hat on, oh, it's this one symptom that I'm having. It makes it really difficult. There's a term, and there's an article in the last couple of years, and they call it not feeling like myself. And that's basically perimenopause and the list of symptoms. And I love it because that's so much more, people just don't feel like themselves, and they can't always label it. It's like sometimes I have palpitations, sometimes my urine feels like I feel like I have to go pee, but then I don't have to pee. My periods are a little less regular or heavier or lighter. Like all these little things. Yes, they may be normal, but that doesn't mean we can't support you to feel better, and we don't have to say just go meditate and or take an anxiety pill, which those things may be necessary or helpful, but sometimes there's more to it. Sorry, that wasn't really food related, but just to go back to when you're speaking, I think it's shifting now, especially if it's a woman physician. If you don't know, go armed with what you think might be happening, oh, I think it's perimenopause and maybe I want some hormone support or something like that, then you're going to get something different. So anyway, that's just a plug for how to talk to your doctor.
That's really good because how would I go to my doctor? Now you've identified that some women may be even getting into perimenopause before 40. When you're not feeling yourself, what are the questions you would go with your doctor, or what sort of information should you arm yourself with when seeing your doctor to be able to maximize getting some sort of result or clarity on the issues you're going through?
I mean, most are generally not going to want to order a lot of hormone tests. So you could ask about that. And I mean, basic lab work and things like that. But things like tracking your cycles to see how regular they are. A lot of women do that. A lot don't. But it's really, really helpful to get a picture of, are they very regular? That's often part of perimenopause. Are you having things like sweats before your period? Or is your mood lower around certain times? Just tracking cycles. And when I say that, I mean the time, but also symptoms throughout the cycle. And then basically finding a clinician that is competent or trained in women's health, which most should be, and it's getting better, but some more than others.
Just going back to the conversation about eating disorders,
Yeah.
how can women recognize early warning signs or shifts when it comes to their relationship with food?
Well, you mentioned a couple of things about watching the scale. So I'm not a believer in scales. I don't know why people have them. I think they're useless. Seeing the number on the scale, there's not that much, it's not very helpful information, but that would be a red flag if you find yourself checking all the time or thinking about food all the time, not going, avoiding events because you're not sure what food will be there, eliminating foods, having more gastrointestinal problems. Really often it's a lot of thoughts around food. People use the term food noise. Finding yourself eating a lot at night. Often that's because you're not eating enough during the day or not eating a balanced enough meal. As we start to, some women, if they're trying to lose weight as they get towards perimenopause and maybe they're gaining some weight as their testosterone and other hormones are dropping, their weight may be shifting, they may be gaining weight. And so they're trying to restrict their food, their calories or exercise more. And it often backfires. Either we eat more at night or the body actually goes into this sort of conservation stage where if you don't give it enough, it hoards what you give it. So instead of using it for energy and thinking and doing all the things you want to do in your life, it holds on to it as fat or storage for later. Your body knows it doesn't trust you to give it enough food. So sometimes the answer is actually eating more food. And I think that's a trap that women get in. They don't know what to do. So to answer your question about what would be a warning sign that you're worrying, it's more like how much time are you spending thinking about food and your body? That would be the biggest thing. And that's different for everybody. But in general, eating regular meals and getting through your day, I don't think should require hours of thinking and ruminating and wondering, is this the right thing to eat? Am I going to lose weight with this? Am I going to gain weight if I eat a bite of that? And that's, some people can do fine with some of this tinkering and dieting, but often there's some predisposition that some women have and they start dieting and it just takes off and really can go south quickly. And that's why, it can be so dangerous to, especially with all the new medication, and they're not so new anymore, but the GLP-1 receptor agonist medications that are out there and so popular, they really, for some people, head south quickly. And I've seen that.
When we talk about perimenopausal women, they often get stuck in the cycle of misdiagnosis. How can perimenopausal women or menopausal women not be stuck in that constant hamster wheel of, oh, well, my doctor says I'm fine, but I don't feel great? How can we advise them?
I think what I've started doing and when you get a patient, so as a physician, we're trained to, I don't know that they were trained to reassure people, but that's what ends up happening. So somebody comes to me and they're worried, they have all these symptoms and they wonder, is it some autoimmune illness? Is it cancer? Is it this or that? All the things, because That's what we do. We worry, and nobody wants to go to the doctor. So if they're showing up to the doctor, it's usually because, they're worried about something. And so what can happen is a doctor either will, do a workup and then keep trying to rule out the bad things, which isn't giving the patient necessarily, like, we never ask the patient. Sometimes we make the mistake of, like, what is their goal from this visit, for example? Like, is it to make sure I don't have lupus, or is it to feel better? Because I can rule out all these things, but then you still feel bad. So I might think I did my job by telling you everything's fine. You saw the cardiologist, he did a stress test. You saw the rheumatologist, she said you don't have some autoimmune disease, XYZ, and now you still have all the same symptoms. So I think that's where doctors, those are the patients I often see, that's where doctors really fail, because they've ruled out all these like bad things, which is great, but they haven't addressed actually the symptoms. And so I've taken the approach, like, we can, and a lot of people may be doing this now, but in perimenopause in particular, if you just kind of look at this list of not feeling like myself, but it's a not feeling like myself. And if I take that and I start with, maybe it's perimenopause, could I do something like a low dose estrogen patch, or test the hormones at, a couple of times of the month, there's nuances to how you might do testing versus treating versus, what you might do. But often, if you can just give low dose estradiol, a little bit of hormone replacement, a lot of the symptoms go away. And then maybe you're just left with a little bit of palpitations or something, but you've made it much easier. One, you made your patient usually feel better. And two, now you're not worried that it's lupus. Maybe you just have to look for one or two other things, if at all. Sometimes everything gets better. So that's, I think, physicians, we see so much serious, severe illness, and that's what we're really trained to look for, which is good. Like, you don't want your doctor to miss some horrible thing, but you also want help when you don't feel good, when we're going through perimenopause, and having a doctor just tell you it's natural, it's normal, or you're just stressed is so unhelpful and really doesn't, serve anybody well.
When we talk about eating disorders, what's kind of the biggest misconception about eating disorders in women over 40?
Yeah, so one, that they don't happen. Maybe that's not a misconception. I don't know, because I'm biased. I see a lot of it in women over 40. It's a big part of my patient panel. But I think, one, that they have to be underweight, which is entirely not true. What I mentioned about your body just holding on to the calories, everybody's body responds differently. So some people could starve all day and never lose a pound. They just sort of get more and more tired. I mean, eventually things happen, but other people just drop weight. And so that's a big misconception, is, we make judgments about people's body size, but you can be anorexic and malnourished in a larger body. You can have a smaller body and be totally fine. And you just really don't know. And so people might think, well, that couldn't be me because I'm a normal weight. And so I'm eating only 1,000 calories a day or whatever they're doing. So I couldn't possibly have a problem, but actually you could. And so if you're having symptoms, or often people they also don't want to recognize it. And so it may be like a friend that you see doing something. But yeah, I think the biggest misconception is still around weight, and that it doesn't happen to older women. And it's just teenagers or, really young adults that are just, going through a hard time. And then it just magically, those people don't just magically get better. It may calm down, and then it comes back later when the hormones are shifting, like we talked about at the beginning, kind of crops back up.
I'm thinking about this like in the 1990s, right? And all the media that was consumed, and the different body type, the waif model. I feel like most of the girls I went to high school and university with, like, we had an immense amount of pressure to look almost frail thin, because that was what was in. And I'm sure a lot of women struggled with that. And I wonder if that just never goes away. And, they learn about diet and exercise, and then now they're back at that same, like, oh God, like, I never cutting a break. And so, yeah, it's frustrating. And that's why consumption, I feel like, of media and body types. And you're right, the scale, it is not a healthy indicator of what your health is. Because sometimes even if you eat a salty meal the night before, you're up like 3 pounds, and it's just water weight.
And water and muscle and bone and just like so many things. It's just the marker. Why would we use a number to tell us how we feel? I mean, to
Yeah.
me, that's the biggest thing, is like, how I feel in my body should be my marker of health. Like if I feel good and I feel strong and I mean, this is for me personally, if I feel I'm sleeping well, I feel strong, I have energy, the scale, then it tells me something and now suddenly I'm not healthy. To me, it doesn't make any sense. I think this is, but this is our culture of somehow, like women have to have a problem, that somehow women's bodies are always a source of, they're always a project in our culture. They're never quite right. It's like, you got to do this too, you got to do that. And maybe men feel the same. I don't know, but it feels like there's always some kind of project. It's the waif, or then it has to be muscular, and then it has to be this or that. And
But not too muscular. But it's like, but strength training is important in our 40s. Like,
but going by what you feel is the most, it's hard to do. We want a metric, right? I think people like metrics. They like to measure things. And so a scale is this natural thing to measure. If women could be comfortable measuring how they feel, I mean, doesn't that make the most sense?
yeah, no, I definitely agree.
Weigh 300 pounds or 150 pounds, whatever it is. Like if I could do all the things and I feel good,
When it comes to like lifestyle, nutrition, what are some, I guess, lifestyle, nutrition, and mindset strategies that can help women through this hormonal transition?
I do think that being mindful about eating, especially to support hormones and to support, we didn't talk about adrenals and we don't need to, but your adrenal glands are important as well. It's where all your stress hormones are made. So eating, I guess I think about perimenopause is a bit of a physiological stress test. It's kind of like when you're in your 20s and 30s, you have more bandwidth. And as you get older, you have this narrower bandwidth. And so things that you did in your 20s, like go out and party or whatever it is, didn't affect you as much. And as you get older, it has a bigger effect. And so things like eating and really taking care of your body become more important, not just because you have more time and you care more, but because the impacts of not doing it become bigger, or you can feel them more. So when you're in my 20s, if I, if I just ate candy all day or whatever, I may not notice anything. But if I did that now, I'd probably feel crappy. So things like getting enough fiber, getting breakfast, getting regular meals throughout the day, not, starving yourself and eating just one meal become more important. Fiber, protein, fat, carbohydrates even can be scary for some people. All of it, having it at each meal becomes more important. And we're not even really taught that. At least here, we're not even taught what like a healthy meal looks like. That becomes more important. And then things like, I think mindfulness and taking time for yourself and all of those kind of self-care things that I'm sure your listeners are already doing or know about, but that stuff becomes a lot more, it just becomes more critical. Sleep is a big one. I mean, you can't do anything without sleep.
I was just having a conversation today with somebody at the gym about the importance of sleep. And I'm like, Friday night, I'm in bed usually by 9. I don't want to go out Friday because Saturday morning, I want to have a good workout. And if I don't sleep properly Friday, I'm not going to have the greatest workout on Saturday. And I attribute it to that because there's no other change. And plus, nothing good happens after midnight usually anyways. So then you're not making the right food choices and, consumption of things that happen that are going to affect you the next day. And then I'm there at the gym on Saturday going, was it really worth it? Because now I'm here and I'm struggling.
Which somehow in your 20s, it wasn't like that.
I have my oldest is 20 and I'm like, we used to go out till whenever, and then I would still show up to my customer service shift at 9:30 a.m. on 3 hours sleep. Like everybody I know did that at least once. You somehow managed to get through it. And now the thought of that alone just makes me want to hurl going, how did I like what?
I know, it's crazy. I don't know if kids are still doing that stuff now or not, but but it's definitely, I can't do it now.
You know what's interesting? I watched this video. I know it's a little sidetrack, but I watched this video about talking about tourism in Vegas. And they said tourism is down, but it's not just, for political reasons, but it's down because the next generation of people, one, they drink less. So like mocktails are more popular now and they invest in their health. they understand the importance of working out. And I attribute it to our generation not having the time and resources of understanding how to do those things. But maybe this generation, with the additional knowledge they have, and whether it be good things of social media, that, hey, yoga is really important, or going to the gym and drinking 2 liters of water and promoting those sort of strategies, and how that's affecting like tourism in Vegas, which is a party town where you go there and you don't sleep.
Probably already is. It's going to turn into some sort of other.
Well, that's such a hey, if you're on the Las Vegas like board of trade, like that might be the pivot, because they do conventions Monday to Thursday, and then Friday to Sunday it should be wellness retreats. Who knows?
I'd be much more into it, going to it whenever I see a conference where I'm like, oh, Vegas, I don't want to go to Vegas. But if it were more like a wellness playground, yeah, that'd be fun. Less gambling though.
Yeah, and that's the other thing they talked about, the physical gambling that the next generation doesn't do. They do it more online. So I don't know if gambling's up or down, but the actual sitting of the slots and playing poker, the next generation doesn't do that. They do everything online. So they're not excited to go hang out at a casino and smell secondhand smoke.
We didn't talk about this, but back to the hormones and perimenopause, one of the other interesting things is it's also with eating disorders is people with not all eating disorders, but they often have hormone dysregulation also. So it can look a little bit like perimenopause. And that's another thing that goes unrecognized. So if somebody has anorexia, for example, which is somebody who's not eating generally, they suppress all of their hormones. So sometimes they may not be menstruating, but if they're the point before they're not menstruating almost can look like perimenopause, right? You could imagine it's a similar thing. And so they may also have this urinary symptoms, mood swing, like a lot of the same things. And that's another thing that just goes undertreated and under recognized. We harp on, well, just tell them to eat more, but meanwhile they feel terrible while they're struggling with their mental health to get to that point. So anyway, it's just an interesting side note that I wanted to mention, because it's sort of all these intersections. So the nutrition piece is so critical for everything working properly. And hormones are one of the first things that your body decides. We don't care about making babies. We'd rather support these other vital functions like your heart and your lungs and your brain. And so hormones are often the first thing to kind of go by the wayside when we're not getting enough nutrition. And that includes, even the stress, not just sex hormones, but also, the cortisol, I'm sure your listeners have heard about, but these are other very much related hormones, and your sex hormones at perimenopause are fluctuating, but even foundational to sex hormones, those can't get sort of balanced without cortisol being balanced. And that's where self-care and stress and sleep and all those things can really come into play, and regular meals with enough fiber, enough protein, enough water, and not counting your calories and not starving, but just making sure you're getting all of the phytonutrients, the macros, the micro, all of those things.
If somebody's listening right now, what is one thing that she can start today?
With eating, I think it depends on the type of struggle, but self-compassion is always something to start with. Just having self-compassion and looking at thinking about why am I struggling with this, and having compassion for it, because it's a common struggle that a lot of people have. Most people have at one point in their life had some sort of struggle around that. And then, getting back on the train or the horse or whatever the saying is, but being really having that compassion and trying to be consistent. So if you're somebody who's binge eating every night, for example, having compassion that the next day, it doesn't mean you don't eat because you binged the night before. You go and you have that nutritious breakfast because that's what your body deserves and that's what you deserve. And sort of that consistency is something I think is really important. We end up yo-yoing and either restricting or binging and beating ourselves up for not doing it the right way, but really just kind of being consistent and feeding ourselves with all the things that it needs on a regular basis, and just doing the best we can is the step I would take.
How can women begin healing even if they feel overwhelmed or discouraged with all of this and they're feeling a level of frustration?
I mean, usually it's good to get, I would say, like professional help. Often that's not accessible to everybody. I mean, there are a lot of resources, but I think seeking out, I'm not going to say like TikTok or Instagram or something, but seeking out some professional guidance. And there's so many resources out there that are great, either, a dietitian or a therapist or somebody skilled, just even if it's a one or two visit consultation, just to get some guidance can be transformational for people, especially if it's one, I would say with a dietitian in particular, well, and a therapist, somebody really trained in eating disorders because they are a pretty unique area.
I think listening to this podcast, you're already in the right direction, just gaining more information, understanding that it is okay to talk about this. And it is something that women struggle with, and finding the right resources, whether it be professional through medical or emotional through therapy, really trying to take that time to figure out, okay, what's going on here? I need to take control of this.
The hormones are often a big part of it, and we talked about that some, but actually at perimenopause in particular, trial and error around if menopause hormone replacement therapy is appropriate. It can take a lot of trial and error, and it can actually help a lot of even body image. There's some data out there that supports topical estrogen, the estradiol patches help with body image, which I think is so interesting. We studied it in athletes, not perimenopausal women, of course, because we don't study perimenopause that much yet. The hormone balance is not to be overlooked. I mean, you can address all these other things, but the fluctuations are real. It's different for everybody. And some people's estrogen receptors, progesterone receptors are, mutations that they have, their genetics are all very different and maybe wildly more sensitive. And it's not because you're just more sensitive because you're, emotional. It's actually biochemistry and your body's reacting differently. So I think that's another thing that doctors don't always understand.
Okay, Dr. DeGanzo, I know we talked a lot about eating disorders and hormones. Is there anything else you wanted to share, or a topic that you wanted to talk a little bit about to help our listeners through this stage of life?
I mean, I think I mentioned it earlier, but what self-compassion, getting movement, sleep, food, this all so foundational, and kind of, if you're looking at these symptoms, not getting discouraged, tracking them, and then bringing it to a clinician that you trust, I do think can be helpful, because there are simple things to do and you don't have to suffer through. And this isn't true for everybody. Some people go through menopause and they're like, nothing happened. It was fine. Like, good for you. Right? I mean, that's not I've got a friend like that. She's in her 60s and she didn't feel anything when she went through menopause. Like, she just was fine. So, it's great. But knowing, I think tracking those things and knowing you're not alone and bringing them to people that you trust can be really helpful. And then falling back on what's one small change. So if you're already in a pickle of, like, you're not doing much lifestyle stuff, you're overwhelmed, what's one small thing that I could do tomorrow and set myself up for success? Because these small changes build on each other. So, like, for me right now, just as a quick example, my mornings, I have 4 things that I do in the morning. And this is my small change that I've just made, and it's worked. I walk the dog, meditate for 10 minutes, only 10 minutes. That's all I can tolerate right now. Meditate, walk the dog, do a little exercise, and eat breakfast. And I'm tasked with doing that before 9 a.m. every day, which is lots of time after I drop the kids off. But it's given this, like, anchor, but it kind of anchors the day. And then I feel like I did my things and now I can get through the rest of my day. And so for somebody else, it might be going outside for 10 minutes in the morning and getting morning sunlight, which is so good for our sleep. Just, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, do it. As Mel Robbins would say, this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 rule, if anybody's listened to that. But basically just finding one small thing and not trying to do all the things, because that can get overwhelming and it will be different for everybody. And then those small habits make you feel successful and build on themselves.
They have those daily checklists. Okay, if I want to do something. Your drastic changes in life don't happen like with one big shift. There are all these small shifts that you make where you start trusting yourself and building yourself and that credibility. And let's not overlook the basics of, like, drinking water and prioritizing sleep and stress. You talked about this earlier. Our kids are at a different emotional needed level. And so that can be stressful. And then if we have parents who are aging, that can be stressful. But how you manage that stress on yourself is going to be the indicator of how you get through this. Those external factors, I feel, they're not going to change. Those are still going to be there. But how are you going to approach it? And that's where the approach of also looking at not just the medical part of it, but okay, well, am I doing the right things to show up for myself?
Right. Put on your own oxygen mask first is the other, the same. Always, I'm a runner and I'm always going to find time to work out, even if there's chaos in my family because I'm present. I'm there, I'm ready. So even if I just need a half an hour, go for a quick run, it's a reset from me. And so everybody needs something like that. That's their form of how they take care of themselves, artwork, music, exercise, whatever it is. Because you can't be always giving, giving, giving. There's always more to give, right? I feel like instead of feeling guilty, I'm setting an example for my children. You're like, look, I'm taking care of myself. So get yourself dinner. I'm going to do something and we'll, hang out later, or, whatever it is, because that's also showing them that they should take care of themselves too. I think, I hope. We'll see how they turn out.
They do absorb a lot of what happens at home, I feel. And so the habits that are created at home, right? They say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. We're always a work in progress, but we're trying
Yeah.
our best and we're trying to be building those healthy habits in the hopes that they see that as this is the norm. It's normal for my mom to go out and run. It's normal. It's normal for her to get up and go walk the dog. It's normal, right? So building that as normalcy, I think brings a little calm too. I also feel that exercising, I this year I've been back on my fitness journey and I put a lot of pressure on myself. Like I should be having these great biceps and this like that. And I now think, hey, I'm strength training and I'm feeling really good and I feel really strong. And that's going to be great when I'm in my 80s. I'm trying to avoid using a walker as long as I can
Right,
because I want to,
exactly.
right?
I wanna be
So,
able to open the can. Anytime I can't open a can, I get so frustrated. I'm like, "Why can't I open a jar?"
well, Dr. Tagadzo, if people want to connect with you after listening to today's episode, what's the best way they can reach you?
Usually through my website, I have a contact page, and, I respond to most people on there still. My assistant or I do. I'm on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, but my website is sallymd.com, or my whole name, Sally DaGanzo MD, which most people can't spell, and you can find me there.
Perfect. And I will put them all in the show notes. I really want to thank you for your time. It was really insightful just learning really about how food now affects us in this new stage of life. So today we've explored the unique challenges perimenopausal and menopausal women face with eating disorders, why this transitional stage can really trigger new and reoccurring struggles, and how a holistic science-based approach can help women find clarity and calm for their health. Remember, transformation doesn't happen overnight. Today, take one action, whether it's checking in with your body, journaling your thoughts, or reaching out for guidance. You deserve to feel seen, understood, and empowered in this stage of life. Let's unlock your health, confidence, and clarity one step at a time. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you share it with a friend, subscribe to our podcast, and continue the conversation on Instagram and TikTok at Her Energy Unlocked Podcast. I can't wait to hear from you. And until next time, remember, your energy is yours to reclaim, your story is yours to rewrite, and your next chapter is waiting. I'll see you in the next episode.